Hey, Lee.
Hi. How are you?
Okay, how about yourself?
Good.
I smell like garlic. It's because I have one garlic breadstick at lunch.
You worried about vampires?
Yeah. Yeah, we had a pizza thing down at the child's sport. Topper sticks and one of them was garlic. Not one.
The bride.
So if I knock you guys out, it's my fault. Only one person signed in?
What's that?
Only one?
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. We'll call the May County Board meeting to order. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. Let the record show we have 2 supervisors absent and 1 late. I'd look for an approval of the agenda, but I do want to make one change. We want to move the Child Support Agency award up to right underneath the consent agenda.
Motion approved with that change.
Okay, second?
I'll second.
Supervisor Hartman. All those in favor, signify. Yes.
I did notice that on the agenda for the Veteran Service Director and under the consent agenda, I think it says IT, Veteran Service Director, at least on the version of the agenda I saw. However, I'd like to strike IT from that and just have it say Veteran Service Director, because I believe that's the position that we're.
I think that did get corrected. It originally smelled like that, but that part.
It did get corrected.
Okay,
Sure, thank you.
thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have 1 member of the public wishing to be heard. Ken Schmidt.
Hello, my name is Ken Schmidt. I'm a resident of the town of Howard. I got a few thoughts tonight. The first of all is you have the land and water plan for the next 5 years on your desk for approval tonight. I'm hoping that you will pass that. I think it's got some very good points in it. It was a very good process. I was a member of the ad hoc committee and we had some very good discussions. It's a starting point, but agriculture needs a lot more help right now than what you can probably give in that plan. We have a lot of issues facing us. There's a lot of small dairy farms, as you all know, going out, and I think there's going to be more, once the price of milk comes back and cows go up, you're going to see another level of farmer leaving the industry. I know of 3 neighbors within probably 5 miles of my place that are waiting for the price of milk to go up because the price of cows will follow and they can get out where the getting's good. So it's not going to be over just because the price of milk goes up. And this has a lot of wide-ranging impacts from your small towns to your environment. We're seeing a lot more cash grain, which exacerbates some of our nitrate issues that we have, and that needs to be addressed. I would like to see the county board members put some pressure on the Land Conservation Committee to deal with some of these issues. It seems like somehow the county forest and the forest management part of the agenda gets much more attention, We have an animal waste ordinance that needs updating. We have a non-metallic mining ordinance that needs updating that hasn't been basically anything done with it for the last 10 years. And now we're entering a phase of mining where there's one big player in industry who's on the verge of bankruptcy. They have a mine in Chippewa County, several in Barron County, and we're entering a different type of mining. It's a lot more of an intermittent nature, and that ordinance needs to be updated to deal with that. When they're not mining, there's nobody around to watch the environmental side of things when Mother Nature drops 2, 3, 4 inches of rain on us. And some of that has to be addressed in that ordinance. It's your responsibility as a county board and also the Land Conservation Department, but they need the tools to keep that eye on the industry. I guess that's about all I have to say tonight. I didn't have a lot of time to prepare this, so it's kind of rambling. It's just a few thoughts that were floating through my mind today. So I hope that you'll pass that plan and put a little pressure on the committee to deal with some of the ag issues, also on land conservation issues. Thank you.
Thank you. I would look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So move.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Thornton?
Under the Mockler rezone, the staff report, recommendation from the staff has some additional points in it. One of them is the County Highway K access. It says, prior to the start of construction, the proposed access point onto County Highway K shall be approved by the Highway Department. Do we need to add that language? Or we make sure that it gets done as we approve this zoning request, or?
I'm not sure. Doug?
Did you hear that, Doug?
No, I'm sorry.
Come on in, Doug. Doug's here. He'll explain. So we got a question on the rezone.
I knew I could be late.
Staff recommendation on the Mockler rezone?
Yep.
You asked for, you make a couple of more recommendations. The stormwater management plan be approved in its entirety. The County Highway K access point, do we need, in our motion to approve this zoning request, do we need recommendations to make sure they're followed?
If you approve it, it's approved as it's recommended to you from the Planning and Zoning Committee, so it'll already be wrapped up in there. Yes.
That was my question. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. All right. Child Support Agency.
Well, actually, I want to introduce our veteran
Oh, that's right.
service
I'm
officer.
sorry. I'm
Thank
sorry.
you. On a consent agenda, obviously you have my recommendation. I appreciate you guys approving that. I just want to mention a few things. One, I want to thank the interview panel. Tony, our Human Resource Director, put a really good panel together. We had 3 candidates that we ended up interviewing. The panel was unanimous with Travis. And I think really what set him apart, his education, his work history, and his passion for the veterans. It really came through in his interview. We are stealing him from another county, so he can kind of hit the ground running. But I'd like you to welcome Travis. And Travis, could you come up and just say a few words?
I'll just echo what he said and thank all of you for giving me the opportunity to become the new Veteran Services Director. I'll make my statements very brief because I know you have a very big agenda ahead of you. I just want to let you know, as he said, I'll be able to hit the ground running. I've been doing this for 4 years now, so I don't need to go off to training. I'll, day one, be in there ready to help veterans. And I intend to be a strong advocate for veterans and give all the help I can to the veterans of Chippewa County. And I look forward to meeting the rest of the team and getting started next month. So thank you all. I appreciate it.
Yes. Child Support, Randy.
I'll have Denise come up right away if you want to come up. This is an award that this group has received for several years, and Denise, our child support director, will give you all the details. But obviously they're a little shy for coming here, but I appreciate them doing that. One of the initiatives I want to do and make sure we do is acknowledge our employees. They work really hard and they do a great job for us. So I'll let you take over.
I know you received this as part of your agenda. It shows the performance measures that we're required to meet, and what I displayed in there was the federal averages, and then what the state averages, and then what our Chippewa County Child Support Agency is doing. And this is the 7th year in a row consecutively that we've received an award, and it's the 5th year in a row that we've received this top award. This excellence award means we met all 4 of those measures, and we've done that now 5 years in a row. So I've got just part of my team here tonight, but they're the ones that are doing all the work, and they're doing it very much, with what we're dealing with today. And I wanted to, I guess, say a little bit about their caseloads. They're carrying each a caseload of 660 on the average. That's up 100 cases from what it was just less than 5 years ago. So we're seeing an increase in our caseloads. We're seeing an increase in how we work these cases. We're dealing with a lot of placements, children being placed out of the homes, so that's increasing our caseload. So the addiction issue, they're making these stats still happen, even with the difficulty of working these cases the way it is today. So, and that's really what I wanted to point out and give them credit for doing this again 5 years in a row. So appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I did want to point out we are featured in your magazine this month, so if you get a chance to read this, really outlines what our program does. Thank you.
You. Reports, county administrator review and update.
This strategic plan, obviously, most of the county board members were able to make the April 23rd meeting. I talked to Joseph afterwards, the one facilitating the strategic plan. He was very happy with the participation, thought everybody put their 2 cents in, and that's what we want. So I think you guys did a great job. The next one will be May 21st from 6 to 8. And then at that meeting, we did set one for June 18th, thinking we could cancel the exec meeting, but we can't. So that got changed to Tuesday, June 25th. So I think we put that on your calendars just to make sure. At this meeting, obviously, we'll talk about, I'm sure, the vision statement again. I think he was pretty happy with it, but knowing Joseph, seeing him go through these processes before, he usually brings those back. Then the mission statement, obviously, we didn't get all the way through that, and that was kind of the start of that. So I think we're doing a good job. We will talk about going out in the community and getting their feedback, and Joseph will look for feedback on that if you guys want to think about that before the next plan. That's all I have.
Okay. 2019, 2021 state biennial budget.
Yeah, I just want to keep this in front of you guys. I get updates pretty much every day now that Joint Finance Committee's meeting. So far, they eliminated for the counties. There was an increase in shared revenue. They've taken that out, so that will not be in there. The 2% shared or levy increase that we've talked about, that's been taken out, so we're not expecting that. But I think we're on the same pace that I've talked about from the beginning. It's going to take a while to get there, and we'll see what they end up in at the end of the day. But just want to keep in front of you. If I have any information or something like that, I want to get it to the board as soon as I can. Any questions on that? Again, it just continues to move. WCA has a Monday webinar that we can tune into, so we get the latest and greatest news.
All right. 2020 budget process review.
Yeah, I'll have Melissa come up. She'll go through the review. Just, it's kind of within the process of doing the budget, but Supervisor Hartman asked about the PFP when that comes before the committee and the county board. So at the exec on June 18th, the presentation will be there. Then it'll be July 9th for the county board. That first meeting in July is canceled because of 4th of July. And then she'll have the presentation on the market analysis that we had to have done, PFP, and then employee engagement. And then at that, I'll give my recommendation on what I think of the PFP program and the employee engagement. So that will be we'll talk about it then. Okay.
Right. So it's kind of, every year we kind of present the budget process just to give you guys an idea of the different roles of the county and the county board. So like I said, the purpose of this is just to provide familiarization of the budget process, explain the roles, the budget process, the schedule, and the expectations of the county budget. And then it provides an opportunity for the county board supervisors to ask questions early in the budget process. So what's the purpose of a budget? So really, this is a guideline that sets the levy limit each year. It identifies each expenditure that is approved. It embodies the mission, vision, and the goals of the county, and incorporates the strategic plan. It's used to show transparency and accountability, and it's the most important policy document that the county board supervisors approve. And it's, of course, it's required by state statute. And then I just listed the link on where you can find the budget. Each year we put it out on the county website. So this visual here is just kind of, I'm going to go through each slide. This is just kind of a summary of what happens from May through November when we adopt the budget. So budget roles and responsibilities for the county administrator. He provides instructions to the department heads. That actually will go out tomorrow to all department heads. Presents the sales tax plan to the executive committee for review. That usually happens in June. Provides sales tax plan to the county board for approval. Again, that'll happen in June. And presents a balanced recommended budget to the executive committee for review and then to the county board for approval. Department of Administration, we provide the information as requested by the county administrator. We provide specific instructions and a tentative schedule of the budget process. Prepare the wage and fringe benefit reports, and then we provide that to the department heads, and that's what gives them the salary, fringe, and benefits to enter into the budget. Construct a draft balanced recommended budget, and I assist the county administrator with that, and then we publish budget summary in the newspaper, and I coordinate that with the county clerk. Department head roles and responsibilities to develop a proposed budget consistent with the priority review and strategic plan and the budget instructions, meet with the policy committees to review the department budget, and then they submit the required information as directed by the budget instructions during the budget process. Policy committees, they meet with the department heads to report to the committee in the review and discuss the proposed budget. They consult with the priority reviews and the strategic plan, along with make any recommended changes or suggestions to the county administrator. Executive committee, they serve as a policy committee for Department of Administration, county clerk, register of deeds, county treasurer. They'll meet with those department heads to review their proposed budgets. And then the county administrator recommends a budget for approval to the executive committee and then forwarded to the county board for consideration. Budget roles and responsibilities of the county board to review and approve the resolution allocating the sales tax funds, to debate the budget as recommended by the county administrator, and then they provide final comments or changes to the recommended budget before approval. And any changes that are made to the budget have to result in a net zero increase. And then they approve, you guys approve the resolution to adopt the levy. So the budget process, like I said, the budget materials for department heads will go out tomorrow. When department heads are preparing the budget, they'll refer to those instructions. It contains budget goals, the schedule, required documents, and criteria established by the county administrator. Department budget preparation, they'll report to their policy committees in June and July. If they have any user fees, the recommendation should be in front of the policy committee and sent in by July 26th. And then capital improvement plan requests, we did a 5-year plan this year. And the departments had already prepared those, and they come to each of the policy committees to review that. And the department heads, they'll review the budget process between July and August, I'm sorry. So July there. Okay, policy committees. So you meet with the departments that report to your committee. You review the budgets to ensure they're within the established guidelines and program service priorities. You recommend any desired changes to the proposed budget to the county administrator for consideration. And then the department heads submit their final proposed budget back to me by August 1st. DOA review, we prepare budget comparison prior year to the proposed budget, and we bring that forward to you, which will be in September. That was something new last year that Randy brought forward. Review proposed budget from departments, and then the county administrator and myself will meet one-on-one in August with each of the department heads, and we'll go over the budget. And then there'll be any proposed changes that Randy will recommend with them. Recommended budget, county administrator constructs a recommended balanced budget with input from the department heads, with input from the committees as well. Gives preliminary update of the budget to the executive committee and county board in September, presents a recommended budget to executive committee in October, and then presents a recommended budget to county board in November for approval. And then I prepare and submit the public hearing notice in the newspaper along with the county clerk with the most recent county administrator approved proposed budget. And that deadline is always 15 days prior to the public hearing, so our goal is to have that in the newspaper by October 11th. The board meeting and the budget hearing, you review the county administrator proposed budget. Changes can be made to the recommended budget, but like I said before, have to result in a net zero increase. That's usually held the first Thursday in November. Public hearing is scheduled for Thursday, November 7th. If there's any budget changes that are made at the night of the public hearing, I will update any documentation and we'll get new summary and budget detail information out in the agenda packet. And then county board meeting to adopt the levy. Budget levy resolution is approved by the county board. Generally takes place the second Tuesday in November, so that'll be November 12th. Finance director, I'll post the adopted budget to the accounting system, and then department administration puts the final budget document onto the county website. And then I'll prepare a final budget book, and we always keep one of those in our office. So if you ever want to see a hard copy, when you first come into the office, we have a black file cabinet sitting up on top of there. And these next few slides are just for you guys. I kind of put some terminology that's part of the budget process just to help you guys when you're going through the budget documents, or even when we're presenting, it just gives you, some definitions of the different terms that we talk about. And I just gave an example of how we calculate the tax rate. Some people call it the mill rate. And then this was just a snapshot of what our approved budget was for the 2019 budget. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Can you explain that? Are you going to go any farther with this, or are you done with your presentation?
I'm done.
Oh, okay. I had some questions from the executive committee meeting the other night about the highway department.
Yep, so that part of it, that presentation I'll be giving later on the
Okay.
year end in the
All
first
right.
quarter, and hopefully I can answer some of those questions. I did some more research on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? Thank you.
All right, department reports. Groundwater study of western Chippewa County, Dan Masterpole.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to make a few introductory comments and then turn it over to the USGS and State Geologic and Natural History Research Team. Tonight, the research team's going to be providing a report to the board, releasing its findings of a major groundwater study that was commissioned by the board back in 2011. And at that time, there was the advent of industrial sand mining and also an expansion of irrigated agriculture in the county. And as part of public hearing processes, citizens expressed concern regarding the potential cumulative impacts of irrigated agriculture and industrial sand mining on groundwater elevations and stream base flow in the county. So at that time, the committees of the county board chose to commission a study and do so through independent researchers working with agencies that don't have a regulatory role, and commissioned the U.S. Geologic Survey and the Wisconsin Geologic and Natural History Survey to do this study. The total cost of the study was about $625,000. It was paid for entirely through grants, non-metallic mine reclamation fees, and some corporate contributions. There was significant in-kind agency contributions by way of labor through the county and through the agencies themselves. It was a very collaborative effort. It was very rewarding because all the stakeholders that were involved, the agricultural industry, those that irrigated, and then the mining industry all cooperated in coming up with the study design, and then also they cooperated by sharing data and information. And I just wanted to mention a few of the significant stakeholders in the mining side. Badger Mining, EOG, High Crush, Great Northern Sands, and Fairmont Central are mining companies that mine both here in the county and outside, but locally our major mining companies are Superior Silica Sands, Chippewa Sand Company, Preferred Sands, Taylor Creek Transit, and West Wisconsin Sand Company. All of these companies provided very significant information about the geology at their mine sites and their water use and land management and reclamation practices. So without that kind of cooperation, this study wouldn't have been possible. I'd encourage you to take a look at the acknowledgement section on page 6, because it can show you just the scope of the level of cooperation that can be achieved when there's a common interest. Fortunately, the study came in on time and on budget, which is a testament to its management by the research team. And importantly, it provided best available science that has now come forward and will allow the county to be very well positioned to make informed decisions about groundwater management in Chippewa County in the future. So with that, I'd like to introduce the major players in the research team. From the Wisconsin Geologic and Natural History Survey, there was Mike Parson and Madeline Gotowitz. And from the U.S. Geological Survey, we have Paul Jukum and Mike Feenan. Tonight, Paul Jukum from USGS and Mike Feenan are here. And they're both research scientists who are hydrologists and hydrogeologists. They're expert in groundwater management. I wanted to say something. The Wisconsin Geologic and Natural History Survey is now part of UW-Madison, and it's a division of Extension. And I think this study embodies what Extension's all about and the Wisconsin idea, which brings applied research that matters to the borders of the state. So with that, I'd like to turn this over to Mike and Paul, who will present their findings.
Great. Well, thank you, Dan, for the warm introduction here. I really appreciate the opportunity to come. Just to clarify, there's a lot of mics on this project. I'm Mike Parson. Paul Jukum is sitting here on the side with the U.S. Geological Survey. We thought maybe during the Q&A session he may join me up here to answer any questions you may have. Just turn our attention here to the slide. I have a little slideshow here. Don't want to see any people closing their eyes out there, though, okay? Because this is going to be, there's a test later on this. No. But I guess just to point out, too, that there's a report that we've released about a week ago. This is available on the county webpage. I would, direct people to that if you have any additional questions. There's obviously much more detail in that report, but wanted to summarize some of the key findings for everyone here this evening, just to give an overview for the county and some people who may not be as familiar with this work. So again, Dan summarized this very well. This project kicked off in fall of 2012, and the core project team consisted of the Wisconsin Geological and Natural History Survey, which I'm a part of, the U.S. Geological Survey that Paul and Mike are a part of, and then obviously the Chippewa County Land Conservation and Forest Management Department. As Dan also pointed out, a number of stakeholders came together to work on this project. Others include Trout Unlimited, local farmers, citizens, the Wisconsin DNR, the Wisconsin Farmers Union, in addition to all the mining operations in the county. This was a 5-year study, so we really wrapped up the effort in 2017 and have been working over the past year and a half, 2 years on the documentation and the report writing. So you can see here that the study area is located within the upland area in western Chippewa County and goes over into neighboring Dunn and Barron counties. As a hydrogeologist like to point out, groundwater and surface water do not obey political boundaries. So it's oftentimes important to go over into neighboring counties to make sure that we're fully characterizing the groundwater, surface water system. So what were the pushes to get us to work on this study? One of the key ones was, as Dan had mentioned, the uptick in industrial sand mining or frac sand mining in this part of the state. These operations use water. They use water to wash sand, to transport sand, and to control dust at these sites. These are a few images from these operations. This is the hydrosizer that separates grain sizes. Here we're washing sand, and here there's settling ponds to recycle water on site. Similarly, obviously, irrigated agriculture, that's a water user on the landscape. This is a picture in the winter. It's not the greatest shot because obviously there's not a lot of application going on there, but understanding that 7 center pivot irrigation systems are on the landscape. A number of them went in during the course of this study. We're actually standing at the well here, and this is a trench dug out to a center pivot here and another one over there. So you can see that fields are becoming instrumented with irrigation systems. It's almost serving as a crop insurance in dry years to irrigate fields, as well as municipal supply. So all of us, we consume water. We water our lawns, we drink water, we may wash our car, as well as local industries. They're on municipal supply. So there are a number of existing water users in addition to new water users on the landscape. And really the driver for the study, in other words, why do we care about this work? Why are we investing resources and money into this? It is to get a better handle on pumping in these upland areas near headwaters of streams during intensifying water use conditions. There's also changes to the landscape that are happening due to industrial sand mining and trying to get an understanding on how that impacts recharge to the groundwater system. And ultimately, the type of tasks that the county board will be looking at is trying to ensure long-term water resource management and sustainability. This is a nice slide that we've shown over the years as we've come up to present at public meetings and stakeholder events, is an evolution of water use on the landscape. So this is just a snapshot in the 1980s. Each of these points is a high capacity pumping well, and you can see that over about a 25, 30-year period, that has intensified considerably with wells within some of the major river valleys, Red Cedar, Chippewa, as well as encroachment within this upper watershed area within western Chippewa County. So the water use is intensified. Industrial sand mining is also a change which is impacting the landscape. So we have farm fields and forested areas that have been, in many instances, converted into active sand mines over time. As a mine would proceed across a hilltop, that would be followed by reclamation, and that can in turn impact recharge to the groundwater system and how water percolates down and is replenishing our water resources. So what went into this study? As Dan had said, and I've just laid out, that was kind of the core driver for this study, but it's also important to emphasize all the work that went into collecting data. We pulled in records from drillers. Every well that is drilled, there's a record of the geologic materials that goes through, the water levels. We also looked at geologic outcrops, trying to map the extent of sandstone units and various deposits for the groundwater modeling. We did a lot of field work. We've been up here multiple times. It's been fun driving up today, just reminiscing with Paul about all the visits up here and the opportunity to collaborate with people in the county and to really collect important data that went into this modeling effort. So we looked at collecting data within high-capacity wells, borehole geophysics. We did stream flow surveys. We did infiltration testing on native fields and prairies, on active sand mines, reclaimed sand mines, farm fields, and we also pulled in water use records from the DNR to evaluate water use within the study area. It starts to get a little bit more technical here, but I think we can all follow along. This is a cross-section, what we're calling our hydrostratigraphic interpretation. So when we're visiting an outcrop and we're looking at drillers' records from wells, that is providing information that allows us to begin to piece together an understanding of what is beneath our feet. As we drive around and, go hiking or farming, we're on the landscape. But what is happening at depth beneath our feet within these aquifer systems takes time, and it's oftentimes challenging to tease out. So this, just for context, this is the western part of Chippewa County. Here's Highway 53, Highway 64, Highway 40 going across. This is imagine slicing through a cake from A to A prime. That's this cross section from A to A prime. You can see some of the river valleys highlighted here. This blue line is the water table. And the basic takeaway here is that at depth, there are various aquifer and aquitard features that either transmit water readily through that system or impede groundwater flow. And that is important for understanding how water moves through the system. Looking at a plan view, the colors have changed on us a little bit here, but we have areas higher up on the landscapes. A lot of the areas that have been targeted for industrial sand mining are within these khaki or light tan colored areas because of the sandstone deposits. As we work into the valleys, we get into some of these deeper units, and again, that's shown here in this cross section. So understanding, coming up with an interpretation, and ultimately modeling these systems are important. And I should say, I glossed over this earlier, but what is an aquitard? What is an aquifer? An aquifer is typically a sand and gravel deposit, like in this area within the river valleys. Amongst these, underneath the bluffs, it is typically a sandstone that is saturated with water. And an aquitard would be another layer that contains clay or finer silt-sized particles that make groundwater flow more difficult. So looking at some of the groundwater modeling results, so there, again, this took several years. This is distilled down here pretty quickly for all of you. But after several years of data collection, model development, we ended up having a calibrated model, thanks in great part to all the work at the USGS by Paul Juckham and Mike Feenan. They are really national leaders in groundwater modeling and calibration techniques, and want to obviously acknowledge all the work they did on this. This slide is a little bit difficult to see, and again, I'd refer people to the report, but it's really showing with each model layer where the water table is and where the water levels are throughout this system. And you can begin to see that water is moving away from higher areas on the landscape down towards the river valleys. So you can begin to tease out where the groundwater divides are and how groundwater is moving across the landscape. This model was calibrated. I think that's an important point to explain too, is that a lot of data went into the calibration of the model. So we're not just turning the crank on a model and saying, voila, here are the results. We're actually comparing modeled values to observations in the field from well records. And when we can plot these two against one another, we can see a very good fit in our calibration, which gives us high confidence in the modeling results. I next want to pivot to some of the more important components of the model result, which are actually these scenarios that were tested. There were two key scenarios that we evaluated as part of the study. The first is looking at what would a mine build-out of industrial sand mining mean to the landscape and to water resources. And we did that by working very closely with the stakeholders, as well as using GIS to get a better understanding of what a potential mine footprint could look like into the future. These areas shaded in purple here show the footprint of the Waniwak sandstone, which has been targeted for industrial sand mining activity. And within these areas, we modified recharge throughout the process of a mine. So you would go from an early condition with native vegetation, whatever that may be, a farm field or a prairie, and then stepping through modifying the land use and modifying the recharge. So what happened is that recharge is obviously expected to decrease over the short term with compaction within these sand mines. And we saw that over this change in recharge plot. So this is the change of recharge in inches per year, starting at the 0 line for several mines within the study area. In the first 5 to 10 years, recharge actually decreased by several inches per year, dropping down to these green triangles and the black squares. After a longer time period, going into the reclamation at 15, 20, 30 years, we began to see from our modeling that recharge actually went back up to what it was initially as a baseline, and in some instances may have actually increased. So we saw a situation that during mining, recharge would decrease, and then during reclamation, it would come back to what it was before and rebound. These recharge estimates were then incorporated into these hypothetical mining scenarios. So we first identified hypothetical mines, which are in areas earlier identified as that contain the Waniwak sandstone, which is a target for frac sand mining. We then also identified areas that would be suitable for placing a well for process water for that industrial sand mine. And then we went through this hypothetical mining sequence where we're essentially walking the mine through the early phases of development, sort of the mid-range where it's actively mining but also reclaiming portions of the mine, and then a late process where we're actually beginning to reclaim more and more of the land. And we simulated this mining sequence stepping through these footprints and could actually simulate potential impacts to base flow of streams. And again, the base flow of the stream is sort of the groundwater contribution during drier times of the year and the flow in those streams corresponding to that. So this is typically late summer, early fall when it hasn't rained, which is not always the case, but it gives an estimate of the percent decrease to base flow in some of these streams. And this can be critical for sustaining trout habitat or other ecological systems in some of these streams. So these were the final results from the scenario testing for the continuous mine development scenario. And you can see the stepwise increase in base flow reduction. So this is the darker the brown is the greater the impact to some of these streams. You can see the 10% footprint of mining impact, 25, 50, all the way up to 100%, which would be all mining parcels being developed continuously. And some of the key points on this is that a lot of the larger impacts have been identified in the headwater areas to some of these upland streams that support trout. Oh, what did I do there? This next slide, I'm not going to get into, well, this is also important. I'll just back up here quick. So this is during the mining component, and then during reclamation. Like I said earlier, we began to see that infiltration rates went back up, recharge increased, and we actually have a reversal of that where we have a gain in base flow in some of these same systems. So early on, it's impacted. We have a decrease in base flow, and then post-mining in the reclamation phase, we begin to see an increase returning back to more normal conditions for base flow. The next scenario that we looked at was for irrigated agriculture and that build out. And this figure here, a lot went into this, and I'm just trying to highlight some of the key takeaways. But this image on the right, and again, we're sort of in the same area within western Chippewa County. We see Highway 64, Highway 40, Highway 53 coming through the study area. This is what we mapped as an area of potentially irrigable land. So these were areas that had relatively low slopes of 0 to 12%. The soils were excessively to moderately well drained. And they're also areas where the current land use is agricultural, and it is being farmed for hay or pasture or row crop. And what we did was we took this base map, working in a geographic information system platform, and then applied a grid of 40-acre cells to that, and we calculated the percentage of this potentially irrigable land that falls within each of these 40-acre grids. And what we saw was that where the current irrigation wells are located are within wells, or excuse me, are within areas within these grids that have a higher percentage of irrigable land. So if you think back to this last figure, the more yellow that happen to end up within one of these 40-acre grids, those are oftentimes more closely connected or related to areas where we saw existing high-capacity irrigation. And what we did for this scenario was we made this assumption that other areas that currently do not have a well could in fact get a well in the future based on kind of reasonable assumptions of irrigation trends that we've observed. And we came up with a footprint of areas that we would place high-capacity wells beyond the current footprint today to test this scenario, to look at what could a future impact of expanding irrigation within western Chippewa County look like. And these green cells here, these are these 40-acre cells, these were the points that we turned wells on and off to test out what those impacts may look like. And I also want to emphasize here that as part of the stakeholder group, this was one of the very valuable components of that, was that we were able to get input from farmers actively farming and irrigating within the study area to come up with what seemed to be a reasonable build-out scenario. So we were not just testing the extreme case of wells all across the landscape. We were constraining that to put wells only in areas that seemed to be reasonable based on stakeholder feedback. So what do those results look like? Well, again, we're looking at this in regards to base flow change. So how much did these pumping impacts in this scenario, which is a hypothetical case, impact base flow to streams, base flow within these streams? And we can see that it had some significant impacts as you had more and more wells on the landscape. Again, some of the larger impacted areas being in these upland streams and tributaries that are important trout habitat and ecological systems. The standard deviation on these also suggests that this is a pretty good fit with what statistically we'd expect to see and want to see to have confidence in these results. And the main difference when compared to industrial sand mining is that there really isn't a reclamation condition for irrigation. Once a well goes in and there's a commitment to irrigate, that probably is not going to be going away, unlike the mining operations that could, after the completion of the mining activity, then go back to some type of other land use. So I think some of the key water resource takeaways that we want to emphasize tonight is that headwater streams are the most sensitive systems that we've been able to evaluate and to model through these scenarios. And they're sensitive to groundwater withdrawals and changes in recharge associated both with sand mining and irrigation. Base flow in streams is expected to decrease as groundwater withdrawals increase or recharge rates decline. And simulated reductions in base flow lower the baseline of stream flow from which natural seasonal variability can already occur. So in other words, due to some of these activities in the future, in some type of a scenario where they would expand on the landscape, you could reduce base flow in streams, and if you double that up with a drought or some type of a natural variation, that could even have more of an impact on some of these sensitive systems. That being said, I think it's also important to emphasize that carefully planned expansion of water withdrawals and mine reclamation could help mitigate these impacts. And I think these are the key things that we're trying to emphasize to the county board and also through our communications, is that while there are impacts that we've modeled that may impact trout streams, there are also ways and steps that decision makers can make to try to mitigate some of those impacts. And just a few examples of what those may look like is to locate pumping as far as possible from sensitive streams. That's something that can be done in proposing well locations. Also, the idea of staggering mine development over time to lessen those impacts over the short term and spread those out across the landscape, and as well as to reclaim mined areas to high infiltration land cover. So maybe making a decision instead of reclaiming it and going into a farming practice which has a higher compaction rate, to go into a land use that would favor a prairie or some type of a system that would enhance macropore development, so root zone development and biological activity within the soil structure to increase recharge. So those are a few of the key highlights we wanted to emphasize for you all here tonight. Again, this bulletin report is now available on our website as well as the county website, as well as these web links here. And my contact information is shown in the lower left-hand corner, and would encourage people to reach out to me or other study people going forward. So thanks again for your time, and I'd be more than willing to answer any questions if you have any. Great. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Finance update, Melissa.
All right. So I'm going to give you a financial update of the 2018 pre-audited numbers, and then I'll give you a first quarter of 2019. So the first thing here, kind of what I try to do is I go through and I kind of highlight some of the areas that kind of stick out. The first one that I do not have highlighted that I just wanted to point out in case it catches anybody's eyes is under the general county. If you look under expenditures, it shows that we had expenditures of 2.4 million. So it looks like we had a loss in the general county part of the budget. And really what that is later on when we go through the document, we did a transfer of $2,150,000 back to some projects. So that is an expenditure transfer out of there. That's just part of closing. So I just wanted to point that out. And then Sheriff's Department, it looks like they had a positive year-end balance, but really where that is coming from is we did a transfer of $600,000 for the jail chiller, and you'll see that as part of the closing document. So really, overall, Sheriff's Department had a deficit in the department, and that was due to the PTO conversion and us changing over to the 12-hour shifts. Coroner, one of the things that were driven here is we had increased autopsies for the year, and then the other thing was in 2018, when we did the elected official wages, that was increased for on-call, and then the coroner wages were increased, so that resulted in them being over budget. Land conservation and forest management, reason it looks like they had a positive variance to the department was due to increased stumpage revenue. And then the last one I wanted to point out, which every year I've been bringing this forward, is the home care. The home care program the last 5 years has been running a deficit in the department. We've been trying to include additional levy to try to offset that. So in 2018, you can see we had a loss of just over 90,000. 2017, we had a loss of like 21,000, but that was due to transferring some levy dollars from some of their other operations. And then 2016 and 2015, again, we were right around $125,000 deficit. I meet with the public health director, and then I have a fiscal manager that's in public health. We meet quarterly along with the home care manager to kind of talk about different options. One of the things we're working on right now with the county administrator is to look at some different options to try to make that program sustainable. So there'll be more to come on that. And then this slide here, I'd just like to show a visual. This kind of shows the different classifications. On the right is our different revenue funding sources and expenditures. So if you're interested in just kind of seeing where the different dollars come in. Okay, so this slide here is really part of our closing. So that first bullet point there is if we were to close all of the lapsing funds back to the general fund, to the unassigned fund balance, we would have closed $1,567,000 in change, which would have been an estimated 40.4% undesignated fund balance. That second bullet point there is with the adoption of the non-lapsing policy, there was an additional, it was just shy of $1 million. It was like $975,000 of the other accounts that we put those caps on. So that would have resulted, if we closed everything back, it would be that $2,485,000, and that would have been an increase to the unassigned fund balance of 43.5%. So what we've done, which the past few years you've had this in front of you, we have looked at, as part of the CIP process, and some additional future projects that we know that are on the horizon, and then we kind of just capture those, and we decided to, with the county administrator, to take the $2,150,000 and assign those back to these 5 categories that are listed below. So that first one there, $500,000 for the liability insurance, which is in Fund 704. Right now, that department actually ended the year with a loss, and the reason for that is we have some high claims out there, and we still have some that are going to be in the first quarter of 2019. So we thought it would be a good idea to put $500,000 in there to capture that loss in that fund. The next one there was $550,000, and that was a CIP project that will be coming forward to you, and that was for a remodel project in the county clerk's office and the county treasurer, or in the treasurer's office. Next one there's at $600,000 on that jail chiller replacement, and then we did $150,000 back to parks capital improvement, and then $350,000 for health insurance. So if we do the $2,150,000, assign those to projects, we'll be closing $335,570 back to the unassigned fund balance, which would give us a 36.3%, which currently at the end of 17 we were 35.1%. Special revenue funds, a couple things to point out here was DHS. I just wanted to show there they had a $549,000 loss to the department, and that really was driven due to the out-of-home placements. That alone was around $800,000 lost to the department. Some of their other divisions had a positive, so that offset that. And that's really partly due to the large meth epidemic that we've been hearing about. Next thing there is sales tax. That was actually up 17.28% over the amount that was budgeted. Again, this is just a visual. Next one here is the debt service capital projects fund. I don't have anything to report there. This next slide here is the capital projects fund. So you'll see Fund 415. There was that little over $6 million in the actual, and that was due to the 2018 borrowing that we did for 2019-2020, which was that $6 million. $4 million was for the radio tower project, and $2 million was for highway. Internal service funds. So Highway Department, there's one correction to this one. So right now, it looks like what you have in front of you is there was a loss in the department of $754,000. And again, that's why I always put in quotes that this is pre-audited. We just heard back from the external auditors last week. They're still trying to get all of the books closed for Highway. And there actually was a state aid payment, LRIP dollars, that were not recorded as 2018 revenue. So once we made that adjustment, the net loss in Highway is actually $336,214. And where that's coming from is back at the Highway Committee meeting in March, there was on the Highway Committee's construction report, there was actually $460,000 that was going to be used to transfer for 2018 projects, which was for savings from the 2017 projects. So each year when the construction account closes out, it kind of offsets. So if your projects came in good, it's going to add to your to the contingency fund. If it came over, it'll dip from that contingency fund. And the $460,000 that was allocated, that was for an additional 2 miles to the County Highway M project. Originally, they were going to do 3 miles, but with those additional funds, they were able to do 5 miles. Again, this is just a visual here. Enterprise and trust agency funds. The only thing I wanted to point out there is in the 602 fund, which is the land development. This is out of the Lake Wissota Business Park. We had repurchased back the Chippewa Falls School District property, and that was right around that $270,000. And then I just wanted to make note that we'll actually get our first TIF payment on the developer's agreement for Mills Fleet Farm, and that'll happen in the 3rd to the 4th quarter of 2019. And then starting May 28th, the auditors will be on site actually doing our audit for the year. And they're usually here, well, they target 3 to 4 weeks. They're usually on site 2 weeks. And then that 3rd and 4th week, we're really just dialogue back and forth if they have questions while they're finalizing the audit report. Do you have any questions on the 2018 pre-closing before I go to the 19?
Just back to that highway.
Sure.
So there was actual $336,000 loss? in 18?
Yes.
You know what projects those were on?
That's partly due because the $460,000 they allocated to do that additional 2 miles. So that's a good part of it. Like I said, we did get a preliminary audit report from the auditors this last week. And when we actually look at the projects for 2018, they really, they kind of equaled themselves out between the different projects. Some were, had savings and the others had a couple loss. So overall, the projects for 2018 were almost a net zero. So that's driven from that County M project.
And that project was just 2 miles extended?
Correct.
I don't imagine you know what project that was, east of M? East of 27 on M? Don't know, that's okay, thank you.
Yeah, man.
Yes.
We were supposed to go to 310 from 27, 3 miles, and then we added 2 miles for the G one.
Any other questions?
The projects, isn't that a non-lapsing fund? That the projects fund that had the $460,000 in it, is that not a non-lapsing fund?
It's in their contingency fund.
Is the contingency fund a non-lapsing fund?
The Highway Department has a non-lapsing fund. So what happens is even though there's a non-lapsing fund, doesn't matter what department it is, when we have a non-lapsing, so any department that has a non-lapsing account, if they go over, it'll pull from that. And if they add to it, it'll add to it. But you're still going to see the loss or the positive variance when I'm showing you these financial statements, because this doesn't show the non-lapsing accounts.
Okay, let's go back to the amount of money that we were over, the first slide where we talked about, or the slide that talks about where the administrator put money.
This one?
That one.
Okay.
Okay, so the unassigned fund balance, under the first bullet point of 1,567,465, that was how much you were over initially. if all of those non-lapsing funds, delinquent taxes, da-da-da-da, okay. Somewhere along the line, you came up with another about another $900,000. That came from where?
So remember in December and then in January, we have, okay, so the first bullet point is lapsing accounts. So that's in all of Fund 100. So that's departments that don't get to bank the dollars for future projects. We brought forward to you that fund balance, the non-lapsing, that fund balance policy. Remember, it listed all the different departments, and then what we did is because those non-lapsing balances were growing. So what we wanted to do, we looked at some different options, doing a percentage back, putting a cap on them, and after looking at all that information, that's where we put a cap on all of those different non-lapsing balances. So the additional between the 2.4 million and the 1.5 million, that was about $975,000. That was over those caps that was set and approved by the county board on the non-lapsing balances.
Yeah, so all of those funds went over or some of those funds went over to the tune of $900,000?
And that's what's been happening in the past. That's why we looked at that to put those caps on that.
Well, this county generated a fund deficit, or not deficit.
Surplus?
$2.1 million for 2018?
By us putting those caps on those non-lapsing, yes. But if you look at just the lapsing accounts of that 1.5 million, that's really departments, and part of that 1.5 million, it could be due to not being fully staffed, right? It's because we give them based on full capacity. So a good portion of that, like Sheriff's Department or Health and Human Services, if they're understaffed, that helps that number grow. There's definitely each year when we do the budget process, we look at if it's strictly revenues where departments are understating their revenues, we look at that. We kind of look at a 3-year average and we'll increase those. So we'll continue to do that. Another reason that this number is so large is we did have some outstanding interest rates on our investments, which the market has been pretty low, and last year they were up over 1.5%. So a portion of that is from that too. I think we were like $300,000 or $400,000 alone over on investments.
My next question is this, and I'll use the $600,000 for the jail children. That goes back into the 18 budget, or is that going into the 19 budget?
So the $600,000, that is sitting in a non-lapsing account. That project, that'll be coming forward to you when the county administrator brings forward the 2020 CIP projects. That's one of the projects that will be completed in 2020. So it'll be part of the 2020 budget process.
So then why was the $600,000 used to offset the deficit, the actual deficit?
Yep. So what happens is because that was closing dollars, I have to transfer it out of the general fund. I have to show it as a transfer out, and then it's a transfer into that non-lapsing account. Because if I don't put it somewhere, it's going to go back to the general fund. So I have to capture it because it's for a future project. So I have to set those. It's basically now saying that $600,000 is designated for a certain purpose.
Okay, but you used it to offset, you used it for the Sheriff's Department budget.
It didn't offset that. It's not part of that 1.5 million. It's basically in Fund 100, it's a transfer in and a transfer out in that general county government. So it's a wash, and then it's put over into the.
But why does it show in the Sheriff's Department budget? You said that the Sheriff's Department's budget had a deficit. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Go back to the slide, the first slide that you put up.
Yep.
There. You used that $600,000 to take the Sheriff's Department out of a deficit. Next slide up. I think is where it is.
Where do you want me to go? This bullet point here?
Yeah, positive variance due to the transfer into the sheriff's equipment account for the jail chiller. If you took that money for that jail chiller and you took it into another Fund 100 and set it aside so it can come back to the board in July or August or November, whenever, why does this thing indicate that it was put back into the sheriff's account? Which makes, because you said the sheriff's department had a deficit until the $600,000 went back in. And the number, so now the numbers on that line are not accurate. So my question is, how much was the sheriff's department's deficit? Because we don't know that. Your slide doesn't say that.
Yep, so it was, if you take the 600,000 off of that 460, it was roughly 140,000. And really, the 140,000, 120,000 of that we set aside in the 2018 budget for PTO conversion, and that we never put that back to the department. It's thrown in that budget adjustment account, and that's where our PFP money goes and any other increase. So what I have to do is, the reason for the transfer out of the general fund and then the transfer into the sheriff's department as a non-lapsing, we're really trying to be transparent. I mean, I could have put it in just as an in and an out, and it never would have showed here. But what I like to do is anytime I'm transferring money, the general fund closing dollars, I'd like to show that it's coming out of the general government, that where we would have closed the non-lapse or the lapsing balances to. I'd like to show that as a transfer out to each of those projects. So if we ever got to go back 10 years down the road, we can see that this money was transferred from general fund to the sheriff's department for X project. I can do it differently, and it will show, then you would see the negative, the deficit to the sheriff's department, but I was really trying to be, like I said, transparent, just to show the transfer in and transfer out. And if that's something that the board wants to see differently, that's really why I tried to point that out as a bullet point to explain why it looks like that.
But it doesn't actually reflect the deficit in the sheriff's department budget until we take it out of there.
Correct. You're welcome. Any other questions?
Thanks for the presentation, first of all. And secondly, back to that slide where it showed all the different projects that are going to be coming before us, this right here. Health insurance, what exactly is that, the $350,000?
Yep, so what we have done is in the past, we've actually put in $75,000 of levy into the employee health account. So the reason we had, we know there's some things on the horizon with health insurance. We're in the process of getting our renewal rate right now, and there's chances that health insurance could go up. So I think what we were trying to do is be proactive to put some dollars in there. So when the time comes where if there's, an increase to health insurance, could this be used instead of, having to come up with those additional dollars. It really was just for us to put some dollars aside for future health insurance needs.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on the 2018 closing? Okay, so I'll go through the 2019. Okay, so the first thing here, like I said, I'd like to just kind of highlight some areas. So being that we were, this was through March, we should be about 25% for our revenues and expenditures. Obviously, if we're over 25% on our revenues, that's positive because that means we've gotten more money in than we were anticipating so far through the year. So the first one to point out there is just general county. That always looks like our revenue is way under budget, and that's due to the state shared revenue, which we get in the fourth quarter. So that's always going to look like we're under compared to budget. The next one there is the county clerk. The reason that looks like our expenditures are at 55%, that's due to the library reimbursements. We pay that out to the first of the year. And then county treasurer, just wanted to point out there that we always start the year with a negative tax levy, and then they earn the revenues through their interest throughout the year. Same thing with registered deeds. We always start registered deeds out with a negative tax levy, and then they earn their revenue through fees throughout the year. And then the last one there is child support. Revenues come in from the state quarterly, so we should get our first quarter payment, we'll get in 18, so that number always looks like we're always 3 months behind on that. Next one here, special revenue funds. So this one I wanted to point out there, Fund 209, which is the RWC Consortium. So if you recall, back in 2017, we started looking at all of the different counties that are part of the consortium, and then we had them put in working capital. So for 2018, the working capital was right around $1 million for those other counties, and for 2019, it's projected to be up over to 1.5 million. So that program has it's grown drastically. So each year we reevaluate that, and if we see that, we keep seeing that increase, we'll continue to increase the working capital of those other counties. The reason for that is we're the lead agent, so we pay out all the bills, we pay out the service facilitation, and then we're carrying usually $2 to $2.5 million on the books until we get the Medicaid revenue, which is always a 2-month lag. The other thing there was just sales tax. Just wanted to point out that we're down just a little bit. It was like 0.03%. Debt service and capital projects fund, I just like to show with our new, especially with our new debt structure with a $6 million borrowing for 2019, you'll see that our payment for 2019 and 2020 is going to be right around that 1.8 million, and then we go back down to 1.6 million, and that's really where we like to stay. The reason it looks like 2022 and on, it has decreased substantially, but we're going to look at doing that future borrowing that we talked about in 2020 for 2021 for 2022 and on. So we'll get back up to that $1.6 million. Last one here, capital projects fund. I didn't have anything there. That's really that $5 million is just allocating some of those projects that will for the bonding money. And then we have the self-funded liability insurance, are incurred but not reported. Numbers have increased. And then we don't account for our revenues until the third quarter, usually October, November, when we get the billing from our liability insurance. Enterprise Trust Agency funds, I don't have anything there. My clicker's not working. There we go. And then again, I just kind of put some definitions of the different, just talks about different fund revenues, expenditures. Do you guys have any questions for me? Good. All right. Thank you.
General reports, Legacy Center presentation, Rebecca Alawadi. Thank you.
Board can come up too, since you're out here. Don't be shy. Good evening. My name is Rebecca Alaudi. I'm the Executive Director at Legacy Community Center. And these fine ladies and gentlemen joining me are Dave Gordon, he's our board president. Tom Deal, he's on our board as well, as Kurt Rowland and Paul Opedal. So thank you. So Legacy Community Center, we are a nonprofit located right down here in downtown Chippewa Falls. And what we're really trying to do is bring a connection resource to Chippewa County. What we have found in the past is that individuals would be going to numerous different agencies to try to get resources and services, and they were hitting roadblock after roadblock, and they never really were getting connected, and then they'd stop. And so we had a lot of people who were not getting their needs met and were getting frustrated and leaving or just falling apart. So Legacy Community Center came about several years ago. The idea came out after Starting Point's closed down, and then what we did, it developed now until this past year is when we actually opened our doors and began providing resources and services. So I guess we'll go through our strategic plan first. So our mission statement is to meet the nutritional need and provide safe space for residents to reach their highest potential through listening, advocating, and facilitating community connection. We really just want to be that location where people can come, get their needs met, and find that friendly face that's going to be encouraging and supportive. Our vision then is to be a compassionate and caring county whose residents are moved by empathy to confront social and economic challenges that improve the quality of life for all. We really want to make a huge impact, not just for Chippewa Falls where we're located, but throughout the entire county, which we're doing through building those relationships with all of our rural areas that don't have the amount of services that we do here right here in Chippewa. So these are our goals. We want to establish that safe environment for our residents. We have a lot of individuals who refuse to come to certain buildings because of the negative stigma that's associated with them. And so we're really working extremely hard to make a safe space for everyone. We want to meet the nutritional need and work on our food security. According to the county health rankings, our current food insecurity in the county is about 11%. And yet we have 13 food pantries in Chippewa County. So to have people who don't have access to food is alarming, given that we have it, it's readily available. We want to raise community awareness about needs and challenges facing our residents. There's a relatively large segment of our population that doesn't believe that poverty exists in Chippewa County because you don't see it. You don't see the person standing on the street corner begging. You don't see people necessarily sleeping under the bridges, and so they just don't think it exists. We facilitate residents' connection to needed resources and services. That was the main purpose of Legacy Center coming to fruition, is so that we can help people get to that needed resource so that they can overcome those barriers. And we improve collaborations with and between community partners. Legacy is really working hard to get everybody involved, be kind of that mediator between a lot of the different agencies, so that we can all start to working together, because we have a lot of resources in our community, but we're not necessarily all working together, where a lot of them are in silos. So we have some strategic plans that we're working on. One of our goals, our strategic goals, is to secure sufficient funds for operation of our Legacy Center. Obviously, we're a nonprofit, so we don't have any revenue stream coming in, and so we're really working hard to try to establish that revenue pool through donations and fundraisers and different grant opportunities. We're trying to increase collaboration among community organizations. And so that's through going to different coalition meetings and reaching out to different partners in the community, not only in Chippewa County, but throughout the Chippewa Valley, because a lot of our residents can't get their needs met here. So we try to facilitate those partnerships outside of the county as well. We promote awareness about the needs and challenges facing residents, and so we're trying to just get that education and awareness out to different community partners so that everybody's aware of the challenges that are here and possible develop solutions to those issues. And of course, transportation is a major issue in Chippewa County. We're all aware of that. So we're trying to explore those opportunities for transportation systems and work with our collaborating partners to develop something that's more reliable. So that's that PowerPoint. And I don't know how to get the other one, but the other thing we have is, so we did provide you with some of our information from our first year. We opened our food closet in June of last year, and it was really after the community pantry shut down, the October of 2017. There was no reliable food source available on Saturdays, and so we opened our food closet to offset that. We offer food to absolutely anybody. Right now, there's individuals coming from 5 different counties to get food right here in Chippewa Falls. We have people who drive all the way from Rice Lake just to get food, because they can come. There's no income requirements. There's no residency requirements. If you need food, we're going to give it to you. The homeless population will come in every couple days to get food, and that's okay. With the 13 that are in the county, we're the only ones that will do that. Most of them are once a month or twice a month that you can come, and they all have residency restrictions. So you either have to live in a certain school district, or there's a few that will actually take people from all over the county, but they have income requirements. We don't do that. If you need food, we're going to make sure that you get it. So that opened up in June. In July, we moved Agnes's Table over to our new location, which is the old Lindsay's on Grand. And prior to moving, Agnes's Table was only open 2 nights a week. It was on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and you could only be there for about an hour. From 5:30 to 6:30 is when the doors were open. You got your food, and then you were left. When we moved, we saw the opportunity to really create an area for socialization and connection within our community, and so we extended those hours. So our doors open at 2, and they don't close till 7, and you get your food in between then. We also were able to expand our meal service by 4 meals, and so we offer breakfast 3 days a week and lunch 1 day a week. We're also open for lunch when school's not in session, so kids are still getting that nutritious meal during the day. And we're actually looking now to expand to have a summer lunch program, which is not only open to the students and children in our county who don't go to summer school, but their families as well, which is not something that is readily accessible anywhere in the county. So that happened in July. Then in August is when we opened full-time with our coordinated intake and referral program. And this is really the connection resource that we're looking for within the county. Individuals can come in and ask us literally any question, from where can I donate a bed to I have no place to sleep tonight, where do I go? And we provide those resources and connections with all of the other agencies, either in or all around Chippewa Valley. I know our numbers show that it looks like it's gone down a little bit this year, but it's because we're doing a lot more of those soft referrals or informal referrals where people come in, and because we know the resource, we can say, hey, you just need to go right here. I'll call them, I'll send them an email quick, and you'll get it. And so they don't necessarily come into our system, but we know that we're giving them that information. This past November then, the final program we opened is our clothing closet. Chippewa County, prior to us opening, had 3 clothing closets that were available for residents. One was up in Bloomer that was open on Fridays. Tuesdays and Fridays. There was the one up at St. Francesca's Resource Center up at Notre Dame, and that was open 2 days a week. And then the community cupboard, which you had to make an appointment for. So anybody who potentially was getting released from jail, if they didn't have clothes, they didn't have access to it. So we started a clothing closet to be in conjunction with the Criminal Justice Collaborating Council. They have a recovery program, a reentry program that's going on. And so we're working with them to coordinate those services. So people coming out who might have been detained in December, now it's, it's warm outside. So now they can get access to those clothes that they need, and vice versa. So let me think. That's kind of really what Legacy does as a whole. I don't know, what do you guys want to say? Feel free to jump in.
Well,
Okay.
the obvious problem that we have is just like any other nonprofit, and that is, where do we get the money to pay the bills for rent and salaries and all of that? And it is by donations and grants. And so we live some months by the end of the month, we hope we have enough money to pay our bills. We think one of our problems has been that people don't know what we do. And we believe that our residents are very interested in other people who need help. And if they knew what we were all about, we think we would have more income coming in. And that's not to say we haven't been supported. We've gotten grants from Rutledge Charities. We've gotten grants from Mayo. We've gotten grants from the Dental Foundation. So that we are working on all of that. But it costs us about $200,000 a year to have the Legacy Community Center there and buy the food and do all the things that Rebecca told you about. So our challenge, just like any other nonprofit, is how do we stay viable and pay our bills? And so one of the things that Randy came and talked to us about was how we cooperate with the county and how do we work with the county, and what can't the county do because of their limitations with funds or mandated programs is, could we pick up for them? Obviously, then where do we get the money to pick up to do services? So we are working with Randy to say, how do we exist together and support each other, and can we do things you can't do to improve the lives? One of the things that scares me is nobody understands how many people are in Chippewa County living in poverty. I mean, it's that simple. There's about over 6,000 people, 2,000 of those are children, who live below the government poverty level. The government poverty level for a family of 4, 2 adults and 2 children, is $24,600. I don't know how somebody with 4 people in their family live, but we have 6,000 of those people in Chippewa County. And so we have a need to help people who live in our county, and we just have to figure out how to do that. And it's not that the county and DHS and who know all this. Your people who are in your human services, they see this every day. The problem is somebody like me who lives in the county doesn't know that. And so we've got to get the word out, because I believe people who live in our county who knew that would support the things that need to be done, whether it's through the county or through Legacy or any other agency in town that's helping people. Because the quality of life for those people is not very nice. They have to make decisions like, am I going to buy my medicine for my condition, or am I going to buy food today? And I'm not sure we're aware enough in the county of what that's like, and how can we change that for those people. That's what we're all about.
I can't, Paul Opedal, I'm a pastor here in our county, and I can't emphasize enough what Dave was saying. I mean, it takes money for us to be able to be available to folks in the way that we're able to be available. And with regard to what Rebecca was saying, again, I can't emphasize that enough, and I think the numbers really reflect that. What you can do for us is, if you have a Facebook, an account or something, is to look up Agnes Table and Legacy Community Center and like those pages and see what's going on with the Legacy Community Center. Also, another thing you can do is, if you have your foot in the door of some type of organization, maybe it is your congregation, your church, maybe it's some other type of organization like Knights of Columbus or Rotary, or just any kind of informal group or formal group, that we can come in and tell them about what we do and how you can help us make Chippewa County a place that we can be proud of. Anything that you can do to help us out with that kind of stuff is certainly appreciated. So, any questions?
You can ask them.
Do we have anybody have any questions for us? Yeah.
Just two comments. Thank you guys for coming, and it was great to see Rebecca up there leading the charge. One of the things, my son actually volunteered over at Agnes Table over at the Legacy Center and had a great experience over there. So thanks so much for, accepting, the youth over there to help serve the meals. So that was wonderful to see, and he learned a lot that evening as well. Good. Had great interaction. And the other thing is, I don't know if you, there's a couple different avenues to get funding for organizations like yours, like Amazon Smile is one of them.
Yep.
United Way. There's a number of different places like that, in addition to.
We're already receiving, I think right now we're receiving a $12,000 grant from United Way, $1,000 a month, per month this year. So we have that. I'm not sure if we have an Amazon Smile.
We did. We just signed up for it today, so please shop
So
happy.
go shop, yeah. We will happily take your money. So yeah, remember that. The other thing is, something that we want to emphasize is Agnes Table. I mean, if we're open, stop by. We will welcome you. We will even feed you if there's food available. Like Rebecca said, if you show up, we'll gladly find you a seat and give you a chance to mingle with folks. You may see us there on occasion, and there's certainly other people there. The coffee at Agnes Table is a lot cheaper than 4:30 a.m. or a Bridge Street Brew. Might not be as good, but it's a place. It's still pretty good. I drink it, and I'm pretty picky. But it's a great place for conversation. A great place to meet up with folks. So it's there for you to stop by and take a look, and we'd be happy to give you a tour of the place, Agnes Table, as well as Legacy Community Center next door. There's a lot of great stuff going on there. Any other questions or comments?
So I do have one more thing. We got an extremely large donation of cereal in from DHL, roughly, actually 4,968 boxes of Honey Bunches of Oats cereal. We have 20 cases left, so it's about 240 boxes. So if you're interested, please stop down and pick some up. I would like them gone. Also, we did just get a very large, about 750 pounds of dog food in today. So if anybody needs dog food, it is free for anybody. I don't know if any of you noticed the last 2 weeks we've had free corn outside the building. Community center is not just for people who are low income or struggling. It's for everybody. So if you know somebody who needs a dog food, we have every possible brand available. Please stop in and get some. I'd love to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to business items. Resolution 16-19.
Resolution to establish a Chippewa County Committee for Chapter 980 placements in the county. Now therefore be it resolved that the Chippewa County Board of Supervisors does hereby establish a temporary committee as required by 2017 Act 184 and Section 980.08 paren 4 paren DM of the Wisconsin statutes. And be it further resolved that the temporary committee shall consist of the Chippewa County Human Services Director or his or her designee, a representative of the Wisconsin Department of Health Services, a local probation or parole officer, the Chippewa County Corporation Counsel or his or her designee, and the Chippewa County Planning and Zoning Department Director or his or her designee. And be it further resolved that the Corporation Counsel shall be the chair of this committee and be responsible for scheduling the meetings, chairing the meetings, and compiling the report. And be it further resolved that this temporary committee will meet on an as-needed basis, is vested with the authority and responsibility set forth in Section 980.08 paren 4 paren DM of the Wisconsin statutes, and its members are not eligible for compensation or reimbursement under the Chippewa County Code of Ordinances. Forwarded to the County Board by the Executive Committee.
Look for a motion to approve. Supervisor Hall, second. Supervisor Shipman.
I can speak on it quick. Obviously, this is a requirement from the state. They decided that counties should take care of this instead of the state taking care of it. It's all set up by statute, and we have no choice. It makes you feel better.
All right.
Just to, I'm reading the resolution, the ordinance resolution printout, and on the very top of it, can you just scroll up to the top, because it looks like that there's a year, March 2021-08. Can we change that to 2018? I don't think there's any time travel going on.
You never know. The state may require it. Yeah, we'll make that change.
Any other discussion? Let's vote. 13 yes, 0 no. Resolution 17-19.
Resolution to adopt the Chippewa County Land and Water Resource Management Plan. Now therefore be it resolved that the Chippewa County Board of Supervisors does hereby approve the attached revised Chippewa County Land and Water Resource Management Plan with the intent to apply the plan to guide the land, water, and associated resource management activities administered under the direction of the respective county committees and departments. Forwarded to the County Board by the Land Conservation and Forest Management Committee.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, second.
I'll let Dan take this one. Come up, Dan. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll try to make this quick. We have a very short PowerPoint, about 10 slides or so. This is an update to the County Land and Water Resource Management Plan, and I thought I would just start by reviewing the mission statement. Our mission is to encourage stewardship for sustainability, to support a quality environment and a productive economy. We provide the services that allow people to make the conservation choices that benefit us all. So that's how we've positioned our services for the county in trying to achieve some of our environmental conservation objectives. The county already has a county land and water resource management plan, And this is an update to that plan, and it's a refinement to it. And what I'd like to do is just explain the process we went through and the structure of the plan. I provided a copy of the plan to each of you. This is one of those documents that it's very, very hard to read on a computer screen. And through working with the committee, we decided to go into kind of a written text format for people to be able to refer to it. Just start with the common fact that given its location and physical setting, Chippewa County has a very high-quality environment. The land and water resource base supports a very diverse and well-balanced economy here. We have a very strong agricultural base. We have a strong forestry base. We have solid mining here, both industrial sand and aggregate. And we have a very sound manufacturing base. And it's been said that if you're going to manufacture something, you either have to grow it or mine it, if you're talking about a tangible good. So we're very fortunate to have this land and resource base that allows us to support the economy. The Land and Water Resource Management Plan itself guides our local conservation efforts to maintain the economy and a high-quality environment. So what I'd like to do with the brief presentation is to explain the purpose of the plan and the process that we've used to update it, introduce the core trends and management issues, and then introduce the program approach and focus that we're using under community outreach and education, conservation on the land, resource monitoring and tracking. Now, I did not get into the details on that third bullet. You can review the plan itself and see the how we're intending to do this. And if you do have any questions, I can go into the details through your questions. But the purpose of the plan is required by Wisconsin Stats Chapter 92, and it's used by the county to establish program priorities, allocate our resources to meet local conservation needs and resource management objectives. It also serves to inform our annual land and water conservation annual work planning. Our staff uses this plan as a basis for determining what work will be done and how it will be doing its work. And it also has a value in providing information that might be beneficial to you as you complete your county strategic plan and try to move forward with implementing that plan. So this is an operational plan that we use to guide our efforts. It's also used to coordinate the efforts of state and federal agencies and conservation nonprofits that also work with the county here. So it's a tool that we use to share our program objectives, planned activities, and work with the agencies that share common objectives. The purpose of the update itself, we do these updates every 5 years, is to report progress and assure accountability to the state and to the county board, to reevaluate the conditions and priorities. It's amazing how much things change over 5 years, and to establish a new schedule of activities and performance benchmarks that we use on an annual basis. We also use it to update what we call our priority farm strategy and determine which farms we work with to control pollution in the county. The planning process we use is a standard planning process. We start with getting organized. We then gather information to review resource inventories and conditions of the natural resource base. We identify the critical concerns. We define natural resource objectives and program objectives. Then we allocate our resources to meet those objectives, and we go around the loop and do it every 5 years. So it's a continuous improvement model, and it's worked out pretty well. The public participation process that we used, the committee convened a stakeholder advisory group that met last summer, reconvened in January, and then again this spring. And it was a very diverse group of stakeholders that represented agricultural interests, both the major farm organizations, Farmer Union and Farm Bureau, the conservation nonprofits, which were the land trusts and the rod and gun clubs, woodland and property owners and forestry interests. We had citizens that represented public interests in surface water and groundwater. We had non-metallic mining interests and outdoor recreational interests. So the committee worked in parallel with this stakeholder interest group and the agencies to systematically review the existing plan and update and upgrade it. This is probably one of the most important things I want to bring to your attention tonight, because if you're not aware of it, it's easy to take for granted, but we really do live in a global economy. And global market demand for food, fuel, and fiber have placed greater demands on our local resource base here in Chippewa County. And if you don't believe me, go talk to a soybean grower, and he'll be able to tell you about what's happening with China right now. Similarly, our corn, for example, is used for fuel. A lot of our fiber is used for all kinds of different things. So we live in a global economy, and a lot of our products that we grow right here using our soil and water land base are exported outside the area and outside the country. So that's one major trend. A second is, over the last 10 years, we've been kind of in a government downsizing mode. Recent economic trends have reduced the level of public services for federal, state, and local resource management agencies. We've had reduced budgets and staffing allocations. All of the different state and federal agencies that I can think of in the USDA and DNR and DATCAP have gone through reorganization, and we've been in kind of a deregulatory mode. So greater demand on the resource, and really a little bit more of a laissez-faire market approach toward resource conservation. So the plan outlines goals and explains what we'll do to accomplish conservation on the land. How are we actually going to work with the individual landowners that make the private land decisions to get conservation on the land? It outlines our strategies for community outreach and education and our approaches toward resource monitoring and tracking. Available resources will be allocated over time to accomplish the planned objectives and activities, and we'll track those results systematically. And the 5-year plan will be reviewed annually with annual progress reports presented to the county board. So as you can see, I didn't go into the details of the plan, but am prepared to answer any questions that you have tonight, or if you have questions in the future, don't hesitate to give me a call or contact one of the committee members. The committee worked very diligently on this project for the last year.
Questions?
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion to amend?
Okay.
We did put a lot of time and effort into this, both committees, and there were two items, and by the way, this plan is an excellent piece of work. There's just 2 items in here that I think we should remove because they were not vetted by the ad hoc committee or the land conservation committee. And when I talked to some of the members, they were actually a bit offended because even though there was some items in ink there, they had not had a chance to even know what these projects are about. And the first one I'll talk about is on page 48, and it's under Objective 7, Action 2, work in cooperation with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources and interested landowners to determine the feasibility of establishing an environmental corridor linking the McCann Creek Fish Area to Ice Age National Scientific Reserve. At face value, that's interesting, but there's been, again, no vetting or going through what this project entails with the ad hoc committee or with the Land Conservation and Forestry Committee. So I would ask that be stricken from this report. That doesn't mean that we couldn't bring it back with an amendment later on down the road if we would vet this. The other one is on on page 53, it's objective 3. And it's with the Wisconsin DNR and interested conservation nonprofit organizations establish a wild lakes program for the purpose of scientific study, ecological monitoring, and permanent lake protection. We don't even have a definition of wild lakes. This issue was not vetted with the ad hoc committee or with the land conservation committee. Again, though, these items may very well have merit, but they weren't vetted. And they kind of are a black mark on what otherwise is a very, very good report. So my motion would be to strike those two items and the tables that correspond with them.
Is there a second for that?
Supervisor Gullickson, did you want both action 1 and 2 and objective 3 taken out on page 53?
That would be correct.
Yeah, you get a, do you know what they are? Lisa, did you get those?
Yep. Okay.
Could I be recognized?
Yes.
I'm not sure what vetted means. Both of these items were brought up in committee as a point of discussion. And the chair did express concerns at that time in committee. With regard to the role of the stakeholder advisory group, I think you're correct, Mr. Chair, that they may not have discussed specifically that item in all of their meetings, but we did have DNR representatives on that committee, and also we had the representative from non-metallic mine interests that had already expressed an interest in their reclamation plan to provide that link between the McCann Creek fishery area and the Ice Age Reserve. So I'm not sure on that one, guaranteed it probably wasn't explicitly discussed. The members were aware of it. With regard to the wild lakes, that clearly also was brought up in committee, and a definition of a wild lake is that it's one that's not developed. And wild lakes are one of our most valuable natural resources in their undeveloped state. So the concept of having a registry to encourage the preservation of wild lakes, I think, was brought up in committee.
What's that? Supervisor Gullickson.
Well, this is the first time we've heard the definition of the wild lakes. The bottom line is, again, these concepts in and of themselves may be an important aspect, but again, through the process, it was not discussed, and it was brought up in committee because I found it, and as I recall, I don't think nobody in the entire committee had seen it before, even though in print form it was there. So the fact of the matter is that was the concern that was brought forward, and I brought it to the county board for your consideration. The committee gave us a lot of time and a lot of effort, and when I hear from committee members, they're going, what is this? Well, yes, it was there in ink, but take a look at the size of this document, folks. But it's a new program. These are both new programs that should have been vetted with the ad hoc committee and specifically gone through the details of it with the Land Conservation and Forestry Committee, and were not. The remainder of this report was extremely well vetted, very well documented. It is an excellent document, and I, for one, think that it tarnishes this document when we have things that are, as some folks would say, just slipped in there, even though I know they were there in ink. Thank you.
Supervisor Thornton. Or Bergeron, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I would just agree with the fact that the committee put in a very large amount of time vetting through this and going through different details. We actually did talk specifically to what we're talking about on page 48 and even adjusted it. In terms of page 53, it was discussed, nothing was really changed, but I think we still need to remember as a committee, we still approve annual work plans. We still have our fingers on the budget. I still think there's value in having these present. To go back and try to amend a water plan if, we deem it worthy and it would be an absolute nightmare. We still have our finger on the trigger in terms of what is completed in a work plan and how the department carries these things out. And I think the fact that the department head feels strongly about keeping these in there, I feel that's important because we have to remember he's a subject matter expert. We have someone who's an expert in this area advocating for this, a plan that we went through over and over and over. And I intend to vote no on this amendment just because we've spent so much time at committee level to now try to amend it on the full board floor. I just think is not appropriate. And in terms of size of the document, I agree. It's a beast, but it's what we signed up for. I have no sympathy to the concept of not being able to get through what you're tasked with as a county board supervisor. So, thank you.
All right. Supervisor Gullicks.
Did I bump a button or something? I don't.
Yes.
Okay, no, I said my piece.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Are we ready to vote? On the amendment. Let's vote. Bailey's? 6 yes, 7 no. The amendment fails. So we're back to voting on the plan as presented. Any other discussion? Oh, sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Any discussion? Let's vote. Release. Plan passes, 10 yes, 3 no. All right, resolution 18-19.
Resolution to authorize participation in the Chippewa Valley Innovation Center Loan Fund Agreement. Now therefore be it resolved that the Chippewa County Board of Supervisors does hereby approve the county's participation as a party to the Chippewa Valley Innovation Center Loan Fund Agreement and does also approve the changes to the attached agreement that incorporate Chippewa County into the agreement. And be it further resolved that the county administrator and the county clerk are authorized to execute any and all said agreements and to take all appropriate actions which may be required in connection therewith on behalf of Chippewa County to effectuate the terms and conditions of the attached agreement, forwarded to the County Board by the Economic Development Committee.
Motion to approve. Supervisor. All right, second. All right.
Try and give a brief history. So the CVIC, which is Chippewa Valley Innovation Center, is a collaboration between different entities that try to get people to start businesses. They'll bring them in, they have a facility, they'll allow them to, I don't know if they charge very little rent or no rent, and one of those services they provide is loans. It's typically loans they can't get from the banks because they're just starting out, don't have a lot of collateral, but they do a lot of determining if they qualify for these loans through this committee. So you have two things, you have the center and then you have this loan committee. Chippewa County has not been a part of the loan committee. They've been part of the CVIC because we did not allocate funds to be part of the loan committee. So if you approve this, it really does two things. It allows anyone coming out of the CVIC to move to Chippewa County without having to pay back that loan. So currently, if anybody comes out of that center, they have to stay in Eau Claire County because we weren't part of the loan fund. And then secondly, it gives us a voice, obviously, on the loan committee. If you do approve this, next month we'll bring back a recommendation that actually the chair has to bring forward to serve on that committee. And we'd be looking for somebody with some financial background that is used to looking at loans. So it can be a supervisor, but it also can be a citizen member. So any questions?
Any other discussion? Let's vote. Release. 11 yes, 2 no. Ordinance 07-19.
Ordinance to amend Section 58-34, paren 4 of the Chippewa County Code of Ordinances regarding a no parking zone on County Trunk Highway X. This is the first reading.
Can I get that second reading waived? You need a
Make
motion?
a motion?
You have to make a motion.
I make a motion.
Thank you.
We vote on that first.
Yeah, it's a 2/3 vote for suspending the rules.
All right. Just a voice vote?
Nope, they can vote.
Okay. All right. All right, let's vote. Release. 12 yes, 1 no. All right. Now we can vote on the ordinance.
Second.
Any other discussion?
Could you give us a quick explanation
Yeah,
of how this all happened?
I'll do my best. The highway commissioner's here too, so he can chime in if he needs to. But this has been in front of the board a few times. Just to orient yourself to the map. Up is north, down is south, east, west. We're looking at the red line on the south end, southeast end. The previous location for that no parking zone, so everything in red is no parking, was, if you see the driveway almost directly across from, right there, thank you, that's where the no parking zone currently is. So we're moving it back. We'll give them a few more parking spaces for that location in order to accommodate some additional parking, obviously. And the reason for this, just a little history, is there was an incident there that the committee decided to put no parking on both sides of the road, and then they have adjusted that because they tried doing something good, but it actually ended up probably making it more hazardous, so they had to come back and adjust the no parking zone. So I think everybody's in agreement and feel this is the safest avenue to move forward with. Good.
All right, let's vote. 12 yes, 1 no. Ordinance 08-19.
Ordinance to amend Section 70-116, the Tourist Rooming House Ordinance. This is a first reading as well.
I will not touch this. Doug, if you want to come up and explain.
So as the, hey, I get to start the meeting and finish the meeting. This is actually awesome. But I was almost on time. Sorry, yeah. So back in 2017, the state legislature made some changes to the state statutes requiring tourist rooming to have municipalities allow tourist rooming houses. So we had already had a provision in the zoning ordinance that regulated them. It was mostly just come in and get a permit, and here's the process. When we vetted it out way back in 2007 and 8, The idea behind this was to allow the tourist rooming houses, but then hopefully that they wouldn't become some type of a public nuisance for those adjacent property owners. When the state stepped in and they made some changes to it, they basically said that we could, a municipality, could regulate the tourist rooming houses for 1 to 6 days, but once it hit 7 days, we couldn't regulate them in a manner that was inconsistent with the state statutes. So when I brought this to the towns as well as the Planning and Zoning Committee, we put some new provisions in here that kind of mimic what the state was looking for, as well as kind of a stepped enforcement to this. So it's very long, but the way I kind of told the committee about it was, it's this way. If you're operating a tourist rooming house underneath these conditions, there shouldn't be any issues. If you can't control your tenants, then you are going to have issues, and your permit will actually get more conditions on them. And then after your good behavior time frame, then you can get one of those conditions removed. If you try to sell the property with conditions on it, those conditions will go over to that new property owner. So really, like I had a couple of phone calls from some of the tourist rooming houses. I'm like, you guys follow the rules, there's absolutely no issues. But if you don't, then your business will actually have more constraints put on top of it. We thought this was the best way to handle this. We have a lot of the tourist rooming houses in Chippewa County, and we do have most of them are out on Lake Wissota. And we have some very good property owners that are regulating these. So on the back side of this, we do have a couple of them that we've had some minor issues with, and this will definitely hurt them. I will be point blank. But if you can't control your tenants in those properties, then you are going to have more conditions put on your permit. This went through the towns. The zone towns reviewed it, provided their comments, and they're acceptable the way that it's drafted right now. Tom?
Is this like a bed and breakfast thing?
This is going to be opposite of a bread and breakfast. This is something a little bit different. This is where you can rent out your house for a weekend, for a night. It's like an Airbnb in a situation. Yep. So what we ran into is just the issues I think that we saw with some of them is it's the things that as a property owner, as an adjacent property owner, you wouldn't really put up with, maybe a little bit, but then all of a sudden there comes a point in time where the line is crossed and you go talk to your neighbor. In this situation, the neighbor's not there because they live in Minneapolis or Chippewa Falls or Eau Claire. This is a way to actually help out some of those neighbors because there are some of them out there that they had 30, 40 people there in a night. One, the septic system can't handle it. Two, if you just think about maybe 20-year-olds and what they do nowadays at night at 2 o'clock in the morning, it was all over the place. So there were only a couple of incidences where these are actually becoming issues, but this isn't going to hurt anybody if they're following the rules. You can only hurt yourself with this, and that's the way we wanted to try to make this available to property owners as well as try to enforce it reasonably. Common sense, I would hope, is what you can see in this.
So you're the administrator that's going to enforce it? Talks about the administrator enforcing it?
Through the zoning ordinance, that's me or my designated, yeah. It'll be easy, because realistically, the way that this document is written, if you screw up, or your tenants screw up, let's put it that way, you're going to mess with your business. And most of these things are not people going out and forking over cash to buy a property. They're going out and getting loans, and they're basing those loans on how many times a year they can actually rent this thing out. And these things are renting out from anywhere from $1,000 to $7,000 a weekend. So personally, if they don't want to get in trouble with the bank, they got to control their tenants.
What if the neighbor is just upset because he's doing what he's doing? And he's just, saying something.
That's where we will vet that out and we'll figure it out. And with today's technology, we'll know. They'll have cell phones. Yeah, yep. But that's a great question. So it has to be, we have to have good, solid evidence in order for it to occur, not just hearsay. Yep, yep.
I know it's the first reading, but, I'm kind of one of those guys that likes appeal processes, and you wiped it all out of here.
Out of this? Nope, there's an appeals process. It's the last sentence. Or the appeal is on here. Administrative appeal, section D.
We took all that other appeal stuff out of there, we went right down to,
No, I just added it in there at the bottom. It's standard within almost all the ordinances that if someone doesn't like my decision, that they can appeal it to the Board of Adjustment. Yeah, correct. Yes, that's correct.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Any communication? I have one thing. We have a card up here for Jackie and the newest deputy clerk. If anybody wants to come and sign it. Agenda items for future consideration. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. We're adjourned.
Yes.
I took
You were the first.
Yeah. That was that C note he put in.